Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of the Expand and Evolve podcast. I'm your host, Carly Pinchin, and I'm so excited because we have a guest joining us this week, Janelle Lynnae. Do you like to say your last name or do you just like that name?
I just go by Janelle Lynnae, but my
Okay.
actual last name is Vignone.
Oh, I love it. Okay, Janelle Lynnae, and I'm excited for you guys to hear from her this week. And just for a little bit of backstory, I remember when you had just started, did you used to do confidence coaching? Like you
hmm
really help people with like finding their confidence, and that was more of the space that you were in. And now you are a dating coach and you help people attract their dream husband, specifically women of faith. And I feel like all of your content, I'm newly single. And so I'm like, it hits in a different way. Like I followed you the whole time you've been doing this, but it hits different when it's like, oh shit, like I'm in a phase of my life where, yeah, I'm very focused on attracting a partner from the right space and the right energy. Like once you become self-aware, I feel like, and you do the healing and you do the growth and you focus on yourself, the person that you would attract is so different than who you attract unconsciously, right? And the
Yeah.
partners before you grow this intention. And I love when you talk about, regardless of faith and all the things, like whatever background you are, I'm like, it's all the same. You want someone who has a connection with God.
Mhm.
And ultimately, I love how you talk about that. So I'm really excited to just jump into this conversation, whether we go through confidence, dating, running a business, like whatever we go to, I'm just excited for this convo. So is there anything you want to say about what you do or just kind of like how you ended up on the path that you're on of what you're doing right now? I feel like that could be fun for like a little bit about
Yeah.
business. Yeah?
Yeah,
Yeah?
absolutely. Well, thank you for having me. I'm super excited to do this. And I know it definitely, like, since you are single now, it's been cool to see your content evolve and all of
Yeah.
that good stuff too. So, yeah, so I was a confidence coach and I still consider myself a confidence coach because a lot of what I'm teaching is still honestly the
Yeah.
exact same as what I taught before. It's just that now I'm getting a little bit more specific because before I feel like I was kind of wearing too many hats. Like I was like, I can help you have confidence in dating and confidence in your career and confidence in
Right.
networking and
Mhm.
confidence in this. And like, while a lot of it is similar, manifestations, I guess I would say, of like your
Yeah.
internal dialogue and like how you're speaking to yourself, how you feel about yourself, what your self worth is like, and having clarity about your vision for your life. Um, now I'm just focused in on the dating aspect of things. But yeah, how I got here is that I've been now married to my husband for over 5 years. We just had our 5-year anniversary this weekend, actually. So that was super fun.
Yeah.
And we did a whole photo shoot. I wore my wedding dress again from 5 years ago, which was amazing. And then I
Oh,
also got a new wedding dress because, of course, you got to have a
yeah.
couple wedding dresses. So we did this whole like old money photo shoot at this like beautiful hotel downtown that has like big like chandeliers and like gold accents everywhere. And so anyway, that was super fun.
Mhm.
But yeah, just at our 5-year anniversary, we love marriage. We have a podcast together called the Next Level Confident Podcast. And we just love marriage so much. And we just want
Mhm.
to help other people be able to find the right person for themselves because I feel like dating can be so tough at times and like it can be really easy to settle because
Mhm.
you like you're single for a while, maybe you've kept your standards high for a little while, but then you're like tired of being single and you're feeling lonely and then you're like, well, maybe I'm just too picky, and so then you start to date someone and you're like, well, I should just be like, overlook some of these things, and then all of a sudden one day you wake up, and at least I'm saying all this, I'm like, this is obviously my story, I'm not sure about everyone else, but
Yeah.
you gotta, at least for me, I would wake up and then be like, dang it, like this isn't my person, but yet now here I've spent like however many months with them and I do really like them, but I just still don't think we're the right fit in actuality. And so I just think it can be so easy to fall into that. And then, like, for me, coming from the faith perspective, it's like, I just feel like my marriage is such a miracle from God. And I just prayed so many times and asked God to bring me the man of my dreams. And I like wrestled with God. I battled with God. I was like, why is it taking longer for me than it seems like it's taking for everyone else? And like, why are all my best friends married? And why have I been, a bridesmaid 1,000 times, but I'm never the bride? And like, I just wanted to find my person so badly. But I also at the same time had a lot of limiting beliefs around marriage. So it's
Mhm.
this weird, like kind of almost a toxic relationship with wanting it because in one moment I did want it, but then in the next moment I like would kind of convince myself, oh, you don't need that. You're better off without it. You're a strong, independent woman anyway. And like, so there's just a lot of like back and forth. And there's just this whole journey that I went through of dating the wrong people. And I was in a 6-year relationship at one point. And I broke up with that boyfriend. I talk a lot about that in my book, which is on Amazon, Flex Your Confidence Muscle, and talk
Mhm.
about the breakup and then finding myself after that and moving across the country and starting a new career path and all of that. And um, so I just like have been through so much with it, Carly, that and then like to be on the other side and to, like when I finally found Frankie, it all made sense. Like I felt so much peace. I felt so much like I just knew that God was in it. Like I just felt like it really did just feel like a miracle. Like he felt like he was torn out of every journal that I ever wrote that I was believing for. I was writing letters to my future husband. He was like
Mhm.
everything I've been like writing to and believing for, everything I've been praying for, like I said. And so like when we met, it moved really quick because we just like felt that peace so
Mhm.
instantly. And we were just like, dang, like this literally feels like God blew our minds with this miracle. And it was like almost humbling, a humbling experience to go through to be like, wow, I thought that here I had all these doubts and all this like cynicism and all this like this is so unfair and all this stuff, but then for like God to take that long for me to go through the process, to go through the growth, to like become who I needed to become, I'm so grateful that the timing happened the way that it did. And like I wouldn't have it any other way, because if I had like married one of those other boyfriends earlier on who I didn't feel total peace about, but if I had married them, I just sometimes like I fear where I would even be today, because I don't think I would have like started my business. When I started my business, I was single and I was teaching women confidence.
Mhm.
But I don't think I would have started my business. I don't think I would have moved to I definitely would have moved to California. I wouldn't have, I don't know, just like become the woman that I am today.
Mhm.
And so that's why I'm really big on helping women not only have the tools to attract their husband, but also start to think about like, who are you and what is your vision for your life? And how can you find a man who's really going to fit in with that, instead of like, just thinking, oh, I need to find a man. And then like, I'll just squeeze myself into his vision and what he has for his life and like just become what he needs me to become, which is,
Mhm.
of course, kind of a sign of low self confidence. And sometimes we do that as women because we're so wired to like find our person.
Yes.
But yeah, so that's kind of, I guess, long story, but that's how I came to doing what I'm doing now.
I okay, there's a few things I want to go in this because I think it's been a minute since I've had someone on who could actually talk about marriage in a positive light, right? Like
Mm,
there's been so many conversations about singleness or like relationships, but you being in the marriage now because you went through the work and you did the stuff. And I think exactly when you were speaking, you're like, why is this taking so long? Everyone else is getting married. Not
hmm
to say other people's marriages are crap, for example, but like when I think about that too, there's so many people who yes, you can rush into the relationship. You could have got married to anybody. Like you could have just
hmm
grabbed someone, you could have found someone, you could have wanted someone to marry, but it's like because you were willing to keep doing the work and wait and you knew what you wanted because you were clear, like you weren't going to just settle and now your marriage is going to be what marriage is meant to be, which is beautiful and amazing with a life partner. And I think that that can be really valuable. Even if you just want to speak on how you say, you hear some people all the time talk about marriage is so hard and marriage is hard work and marriage is this and marriage is that. Like speaking about it in a positive light. Like for you now, if you were to think, because how you just mentioned, like imagine you married one of those other boyfriends, right? Where you didn't feel full peace in a marriage like that versus a marriage like the one you're in right now. What would you say for like some of the key components that you feel make your marriage so amazing? I'm sure it's like you both just I don't know. It's like kind of whether you're writing the journal entries or you're getting really clear on what you want or you're um just putting it out there and focusing on yourself like how you said like you built your business. You did what you needed to do. You moved to California. Like you took the steps you needed for you, which allowed
hmm
you to become the person you needed to be in the right space to attract each other. And I
Yeah.
think that that's so beautiful and now your marriage is going to be so different than the unconscious relationship that you're completely unaware of. You don't really know what you're doing. You just kind of fall into it and you settle. And so I don't know if there's anything you want to say on just marriage in general of like, I don't know how it should feel. Like now that you've been in it for
Mhm.
5 years, it's not fresh anymore. Like people can't say, "Oh, you're just in the honeymoon phase," you know? Like you've been married for 5 years. So it's like you've been through kind of the humps where a lot of people I feel like would start to feel some of the toughness, right? And so it's
Mhm.
like what do you have to say whether it's just inspo for people to understand or like just anything in regards to marriage or tips for people who are married. There's a lot of people who listen to this who are married. And what makes your relationship so amazing that maybe they could have as takeaways too.
Yeah. Well, first thing I'll say is we actually are still in the honeymoon phase because we
Yeah,
are committed to the honeymoon phase
of course.
forever. And
Yes.
that was on our cake this weekend. Honeymoon
Yeah.
phase forever is like one of our key terms. I'm actually thinking about like starting a clothing line or something that says honeymoon phase forever because I'm so committed to that idea.
Yes.
Even like the ideology around any area of your life, like when
Right.
you move into a new home or when you start a new job, or like there's all these other areas of our life that we have the honeymoon phase and then we let ourselves like fall out of it because we forget to be grateful for what we have. And so I think that the even just the mindset of honeymoon phase forever is a really special mindset. And a lot of people, I feel like sometimes like married couples will be like, well, you don't want to be in the honeymoon phase forever because like you want to like grow a deeper love. I'm like, okay, yes, you can grow a deeper love. And of course, your love is going to get deeper and deeper and deeper than like it was at the very beginning, but you can still create that like
Mhm.
almost like, I don't know, on a regular basis, Frankie and I are still asked by people who like don't know us very well if they see us out in public or something like, oh, are you guys like newlyweds? And it's because we like are so intentional to keep being like sweet like that to each other and to
Mhm.
like touch each other and kiss each other and giggle and like be little kids together. And I'm always just like, we're just two kids in love, like all this stuff. And so, yeah, I think a couple different things like one thing that came to mind on top of, you know, I obviously mentioned like moving and starting my business and all that kind of stuff. On top of that, you know, it's the inner work that I did during that
Mhm.
time around like, okay, why do I keep attracting the same type of guy over and over and over again with like a new face? What is it about me that is creating that? And how can I
Mhm.
heal those parts in me? And so a lot of that like inner healing work is what I teach my students inside of my academy, Attract Your Husband Academy. And so like we think about like, okay, what was your relationship like with your mom? What was your relationship like with your dad, or you know, whoever your caregivers were? And you know, what marriages did you see growing up that you were inspired by, if any? And what was like the narrative that you heard about marriage from a young age? You know, what were the
Mhm.
lies that were instilled, even if they were like very subconscious, right? Like little seeds that were planted around marriage and men too. Like even how
Mhm.
we speak about men is really, really, really important. So I have a whole lesson on. I have a couple different lessons kind of covering all these different things I'm talking about right now within the academy.
Mhm.
And so that's where a lot of my students see that radical shift and breakthrough in those types of thought patterns, because it's like if you keep saying that like men are jerks, or like all guys are
Mhm.
like this, or like, you know, guys aren't very helpful, or like guys are like, it can even just be little things, you know what I mean? It doesn't have to be like, yes, there's like the dramatic of just like all men are a-holes. And I know some
Mhm.
women say that kind of stuff, or all the good guys are taken. Like there's all these narratives that women like to replay over and over and over again. And people like to say it no matter like their age group too. Like if you're
Yeah.
younger, then the younger girls are like, oh, well, it's because all the guys are just so immature in my age group. And then it's like, if you're older, you're like, well, I'm older. And by the time you get into your like, you know, 30s, 40s, 50s, like they're all married. Like people are just constantly
Mhm.
speaking, to put it really bluntly, death over their relationship, like death over the possibility of marriage for themselves because of how they're speaking about it. And there's a Bible verse that says the tongue has the power of life and death. And so
Mhm.
we have to think, are we speaking life over the things that we're believing for, like marriage, or are we speaking death over it? And so that goes for even
Mhm.
the married people listening right now. Like, how are you speaking about your husband when he's not in the room? How are you speaking about your husband to your friends and family, and even just like in your mind, you know, and really starting to take thoughts captive
Mhm.
and like challenge those thoughts. And so obviously like there's moments where I get annoyed with my husband, Frankie, and I'll be like, oh, like Frankie's like so unclean, and like I can't believe like his pee is on the squatty potty again, you know, and like having these moments where I'm just like, it's so gross living with a guy. And, you know, I'll have these moments where I'm like saying something like that. And then I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like, okay, yes, obviously, I don't just shove those things down. I'm a communicator. So, like,
Yeah.
obviously, if I'm talking about this on a podcast, I can talk about it with my husband and be like, hey, there's pee on the seat again, or there's pee on the squatty potty, or there's toothpaste in the sink. Like,
Mhm.
but also changing my energy with how I'm asking,
Mhm.
and being like, okay, I do things that are also really annoying and not cool, but like he is never as harsh with me as I am can be with him. And so then I really like, this is definitely a work in progress, obviously, even as I'm
Mhm.
talking about it. But it's like when I see that, it's like triggering to see whatever the thing that pisses you off in your husband. But then like I'm like, okay, well, what are some of the things that I do that aren't that cool? And
Yeah.
I'm like, it's so funny how sometimes I feel like I have this like this high view of myself, you know, like my ego. And I'm just like, oh, I'm just like so perfect in every way. And then it's like, but then there's all these problems with him.
Yeah.
But in reality, it's like, well, you know, there's times where I don't load my dishes, or there's times where I
Right.
have clothes like all over the room, like 10 times more than the like two boxers of his that I see. But of course, his boxers are the problem. But
Yeah.
my outfits on the floor are not the problem because I had to find a lot of outfits to figure out what I was wearing. You know, like we find these reasons to think like why we're not at fault or why we're not, you know,
Yeah.
the problem. And so I think that even just like getting the habit of being like, I am also a flawed human, and having like
Yeah.
that humility. But I think
Mhm.
that that's where humility and confidence are such a beautiful like symbiotic relationship, because when you have confidence, you can actually be humble and you're
Yeah.
not like beating yourself up about it. Because then that's the other flip side, is that I think like so many women are so mean to themselves,
Mhm.
and they're just like constantly talking crap to themselves, and they're constantly thinking that they're the problem. And
Mhm.
so that's like also not healthy, right? So there is that like beautiful balance between confidence and loving yourself, but also humility. And when you're trying to just like point a finger at everyone else, or even just again going back to like marriage relationships, if you're constantly pointing the finger at the person you're in a relationship with, thinking like they're the problem, they're the problem, they're the problem, they're the problem, it does take some humility to think,
Mhm.
okay, what are some of the things that I bring to this that are my lesser strengths? And that's something we talk about in my academy too, is like own your strengths, but also know what your lesser strengths are, so that way you can be
Mhm.
humble when that comes up.
Right.
And I say all this, and I want to say a quick caveat, which is I don't want anyone who's dating right now to be listening to this and then thinking that what I'm saying is that like you should settle into a relationship because he's going to be imperfect and you're going to be imperfect. So it's like, okay, it's just probably going to suck. No, please do not hear that.
Yeah.
Please do not hear that. When you're with the right person, you're going to be so excited and you're going to be so happy that this is your person. And like, I really believe Frankie and I've had an easy marriage. Like, our marriage has so much ease and so much flow to
Mhm.
it. And yes, of course, there's hard moments and there's moments where he's annoying or there's moments where we fight. Like, we're human beings.
Mhm.
The overall anthem of our marriage has been ease and flow and happiness and joy and having a great time together, and two besties living life together. And so, while yes, someone's going to have imperfections, I don't want someone to be like, I feel like so many people kind of told me in my dating, like, your standards are too high, you want too much, like, no one's going to be like what you're looking for. And
Mhm.
they were wrong, because I did find what I was looking for and we have this incredible marriage, but he's still a human. That's what I'm trying to come back to. It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
I'm on fire for him. I love being, it's just like your best friend. Like, you think
Yeah.
about your best girlfriend, like, you love your best friend. She's amazing, but you're not like blind to every single flaw. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like, we're all humans. We all have flaws, but you love them even with their flaws, and even their flaws aren't like enough to like pull you apart from that, you know?
Right. Because I think there's such a difference in a flaw versus like a character trait, right?
Yeah.
It's like there's if all the character traits are there, because I'm just saying if you take the best friend example, right? Like you could know you guys have great communication, you have so much fun together, you love them so much. All of those fundamentals of building a relationship together are there. And like I don't know, I'm thinking of my friend Steph, like she'll pull pieces of her hair out, for example, or like it'll be all over the bed. It's like none of that makes them a bad human or someone you can't have a relationship with, right? Like
Yeah.
that's, I think there's such a key difference there of annoying normal human tendencies and
Mhm.
then things that would actually negatively impact your relationship. Like if you can't communicate, if they don't respect you, if you can feel that you never feel, like you said, peace or love or joy. Whoa, joy when you're together, like those things are change the relationship. Someone's hair or
Mhm.
pee in the toilet doesn't. And so I think it is. It's like not being nitpicky about humanness in a person, but then also knowing that that doesn't mean that you, oh, he's just not that great communicator, but like all these other things are great. Like those things that are really, really important to you, you can't overlook those. And I think that's what you're saying is so important. And even for me to remember, like, because you hear that all the time. Like your standards are too high, you want too much. And then when you're in it, in the season of like I want you to talk about this too in the before he kind of arrived into your life, like what was happening in your life at that point. But I feel like even for me, when I think about myself, like I've been so intentional about thinking what actually matters to me for a life partner, not
Mhm.
just what everyone else says is great and what they should look like and all that. Like, no, like qualities that really, really matter to me. And there is moments where I'm like, does this even possible to exist? Because then when you start to,
Mhm.
and I'm sure you had this, like, did you go through the phase of kind of getting clear on what you wanted and now you're kind of dating and you're just like, dang, this guy's really great, but like, he doesn't have this, and am I wanting too much? Like, does that person really exist? I think you go through this battle within your mind even of staying committed to the vision that you have and
Mhm.
trusting that if you're patient enough, it's there. It's just going to happen on, like you said, God's time, not your time. And I think
Mhm.
of even myself 6 months ago, 8 months ago, a year ago, when I'm like, oh my God, just where's that person versus who I am right now? And I'm like, thank God they didn't show up then, because I had to go through so much more and be so much more self assured in myself. I think to be in a place where I'm going to attract the person that I really am wanting. And I don't know if you want to share on that a little, but like, just what was the beginning phases like where you became aware, you started doing the work, you started doing the stuff? Like, did you end a toxic relationship and then start doing the work and then started dating? Like, how did that journey go for you in like finding your husband and like, I don't know, a couple years leading up to it? What was your dating
Yeah.
life and all that like?
Yeah, no, I was definitely not linear. It wasn't like
Yeah.
I broke up with someone that was toxic, then I did all this healing, and then I found Frankie. It was
Yeah.
not like a linear line like that at
Yeah.
all. It was like I broke up with, I don't know, some people I dated were probably toxic, some maybe weren't. Like
Yeah.
I don't necessarily want to put like all of my
Right.
exes in some
Yeah.
sort of like, or even guys that I went on dates with in some sort of like all encompassing like toxic men or
Mhm.
something like that. Um, I dated some healthier men. I dated some unhealthier men. Um, and I let's see. Yeah, it is a really good question. I would say I was like healing and dating at the same time. Like I know a lot of women like take larger breaks of time while they're doing their healing journey. And I think that that's like, I think that's between you and God, like spending that time to be like, okay, God, what are you asking me to do right now? Like, are
Yeah.
you asking me to take a break? Are you asking me to keep going on dates? Because one of my biggest pet peeves is women who like don't ever go on dates, but then they're like wondering why they haven't found their husband. And I'm like, bro, you can't just sit at home all day every day and just think he's gonna like show up on your doorstep, you know?
Yeah.
And women who are like dating apps are the worst. It's like, okay, well, I know so many people who are married and are in the best marriages ever, and they met on a dating app. So I
Totally.
get that dating apps can be a little bit exhausting. I always like now I equate it to like trying to find and buy a home in California, which is where I live, is it's like I open up Zillow or Redfin or Compass and I
Yeah.
like have my filters in and I look around and I'm like depressed after I get off. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that's all I can get for my money here.
Yeah.
And then I get off and then I like stay off for a few days and then I'm like, okay, I'm gonna check again. And then I check again and then I'm like, oh, it's still pretty bleak out there, but okay, God, like I know you have something good for me. Like, come on, I'm believing, you know. And so, like, there's times where I'm like, I should delete all of my apps, like,
Mhm.
put them
Yeah.
like Zillow and Redfin and stuff.
Yeah.
So I actually really think it's hilarious that I like have this whole like I want to do a reel or like a podcast on all the similarities between
No, you
house
need
buying
to. Yeah.
and your person. But even then, you can buy a house and you're like, well, I only have to be in this house for like 3 to 5 years, and then I can like level up. But like with marriage, that's not really how we're thinking about it. So there's even more pressure, I know, with dating and marriage. But anyway, all this goes to say, I do find it to be a big pet peeve when people don't take any of the action necessary and they're just like,
Mhm.
well, I'm praying and I'm believing, or like when the time's right, or I'm healing. Like I think sometimes we use that as a protection mechanism, but not actually take the action necessary.
Mhm.
But on the flip side, then there's also moments, and I think I probably aired a little bit more on this side, is like I think that I spent probably too much time like dating, and not really giving myself breaks when necessary. Um, so it's hard to find a perfect balance. There's no such
Yeah.
thing probably as a perfect,
Well, you
perfect
learn
balance.
I think you learn through it. Like,
Yeah.
for you, you needed to go on those dates and kind of
Mhm.
meet people, and then it's like some people might need longer breaks, and you're
Yeah.
gonna exactly like you said, like, you're gonna feel the pull, like, do you need to get out there and go on the date, or are you needing to pull back a little bit and, like, spend some time with you? Because now you can use either one as a distraction protection mechanism, right? Like,
Exactly.
you could become obsessed with, "I'm gonna find my person, I'm gonna find my person, I'm gonna find my person," and, like, looking all day and then going on dates chronically versus
Mhm.
spaces where it's like, okay, have you taken any time to just be with you? Like, can you be
Yeah.
with you? Can you get clear? Um, because I found I was starting to do that with the dating apps. Like, I'll just put in all the time and effort and I'll just look and I'll just keep looking. And then I
Mhm.
went, whoa, 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 whoa. Like, I just feel this time is going to be different for me. Like, I've looked and seeked and gone after almost every previous partner. Like, I'll see them. I'm like, I want you. I'm going to have you. Versus this time,
Mhm.
I'm like, I don't know. I just feel like it's going to be different. There's going to be a phase of, I don't need to do so much. Like, I just need to
Mhm.
exist as I am and, like, yes, put myself out there. Yes, have conversations. Yes, meet people. but I don't need to go seeking him out. I'm like, I'm going to let him also lock in on me versus me being
Yeah.
the like animal that's like, I'm going to
Yeah.
get you know, because I'm
Like the
like,
ebb
that
and
was,
the flow, like there should be a little bit of
yeah,
both. Like it's not like you're just sitting at home doing nothing and not
yeah,
even going on an app or not even going out to where your person might be. Or
yeah,
like I always say, even if you're like going to networking events or going to church or wherever it
yeah,
is that you're going, like having that vulnerable, open energy. And that's an
yeah,
entire lesson in my course as well, is like
yeah,
journaling through like what's your energy like when you're going places, and are you willing to make eye contact with guys, and are you willing to smile, and like it's not like that's not going after, it's not like,
totally.
pursuing men, but also like I think sometimes women can, again, I know there's no perfect, so I don't want someone to listen to this and be like, oh my gosh, there's so many
Secret sauce.
things that I
Yeah,
have to do. But there is that ebb and flow between like having an open energy and open heart posture, being like, there's amazing men out there. Today
mhm,
could be the day that I meet him, or it could not be, but something good is going to come from me going to this event, or something good is going to come from me going to church, or something good is going to come from me going on a date, or whatever it is. Like releasing some of that expectation and pressure and control of like, this
yeah,
has to be the person. Because sometimes people will DM me on Instagram and be like, how do I make someone want me or something like that? And I'm like, well, I don't think you should just choose one person to lock in on them and be like, I need them.
yeah,
How do I make them want me? Like that feels very much like you're trying to be the god of your own life. And it's like
yeah,
God might have someone even better for you. So you get
right,
to surrender who that exact human being is, and you get to work on your own self-worth, your relationship with God, having healing over, previous relationships you've been in, healing over your mindset patterns around marriage, relationships, and dating. Um,
mhm,
and then like that's when you're going to attract the guy, to your point. Like there's going to be a level of ease with it. It's
mhm,
not going to feel like some
job.
strenuous thing, that you're constantly just pushing, 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 pushing,
Yeah,
pushing, like there might be some seasons where you feel like you need to get yourself out of your comfort zone, because sometimes you have to do like what's less comfortable for you, right? So if you're someone who's more comfortable not going on dates, you're more comfortable kind of just doing your own thing, hang out with your friends, and you haven't actually gone on a date in a really long time, then your growth is probably going to be like getting yourself out there and actually um asking a friend to hook you up with a guy, or
mhm,
to go on a dating app, or to go out and give your number to some guy at a bar or whatever, like something like that, where you're just
mhm,
starting to get in the habit of putting yourself out there a little bit. But if you're like the serial dater who like, you go on like 3 to 5 dates a week, and like, you're just like guy after guy after guy after guy, like your growth is going to be spending a couple nights alone each week and spending that time journaling, spending that time
mhm,
like in reflection, which is why I know I keep talking about my course, but that's why I love my course so much, is because all my clients are always like, this has helped me become so much more intentional
yeah,
in my dating and helped me heal from things that I didn't even realize was happening in my mind. So
mhm,
that's why it's like if you keep running a million miles an hour, but you don't do any of the healing part, then then it's not really going to be helpful to take all the action in the world.
right. Um, which I just think it's so. There was something you just said that I was just thinking about. Hold on. I don't know. It doesn't matter.
Dang it!
Anyways,
Where
I'm
that
like, I know it is helpful because I think so. I'm even thinking about myself where I'm like, yeah, I realized I had a fear of men. Like when I went on my first date, I was like, oh my gosh, I think I have this weird underlying fear of men. Like I'm going to be taken advantage of. And so I'm like,
Mm.
how open have I been to men in general if I always feel like I need to look down, hide, shut down, not get too close, not make too much eye contact, like be worried about being with a man alone. I'm like, what subconscious beliefs have I been running in those
Mm.
programs, right? That you keep repeating in your mind that you don't even aren't even really aware of. And I'm like, had I not had to go on dates, because honestly, like up until my husband, like these guys I met like I never went on a date. I never went on a date with
Mm.
someone I didn't really know. I knew them through school, or I knew them through friends, or I knew
Yeah.
them through something before I ever went on a date. And so when I went on my first and second date with people I really didn't know, that was such a big step for me. And I just realized, holy crap, like I have a lot of funny thoughts showing up for me
Your
right now.
belief was like that they were
Yeah.
going to take advantage of you, like
Something
physically
like
or something like
this
that. Or
weird fear that I just realized it's not like it wasn't like I was actually afraid for my life, but I had these funny thoughts show up. And that's when I realized, like, okay, how have I been applying these without even realizing it in life to men? Like, assuming that
Mhm.
I'm not okay just to be with a man alone. And so I feel like I'm still having to even move through that where I'm like, it's okay to go on a date. you're going to be fine. Like those
Yeah.
weird things, like you said, the
Mhm.
discomfort of it, where had I never had to go on a date, I never would have even known that existed. I didn't know that I
Yeah.
did that. I didn't know that I acted like that, where I would put my eyes down, where I wouldn't make eye contact, or I wouldn't really smile, or any of that stuff. Like I would go into shutdown mode, where it's helped show me being single, because I was the person who was always in relationships. So I felt safer to be in a relationship, but to be open and single, like you said, it is vulnerable to be
Yeah.
in an open energy, like I'm open, I'm ready, and like putting your heart out there is so different than like, oh, I kind of know this person, so this feels safe, so I'm ready to open to this person.
Mm.
It's just different in an open setting like that. So I'm like, that is such a valid point for people who, if you are single and trying to date, just start noticing what shows up for you. Like what kind of thought
Yeah.
patterns, what shows up for you. And then I think there is that healthy balance of not becoming obsessed and like locking in on one person. And something I always like to remind myself is, if it's not happening with that person, even though you want it so bad, there's either timing isn't right. Maybe you do know you're supposed to be together, timing isn't right. Or I always say, like, I think of like angel, spirit guides, God, they can see what you can't. So you could have this image of this person that's so perfect for you, but like they really could not be. And there could be things that you don't know about them. And so there's actually creating distance for a purpose and a reason. And I always see it as like my own protection. And that's just a thing that's really helped me, is if I lock in on someone and really want it and it's not happening, then I'm like, it's okay, because I trust so much that like the person who's meant for me is there, and I don't need to worry about it as long
Yeah.
as I'm focusing on me and doing all the things.
It's
Um,
beautiful. I wanna say one quick thing on
yeah.
that, which, like, I feel like a prayer that's so good to say is, like, "Bless it or block it." And I
Mhm.
feel like having that mindset really in any area of life would be like, "Okay, God, like, bless this or block it." Like,
Yes.
either open the door wide open with, like, ease and flow, or close it and slam the door
Block it
shut
out.
really, really hard, and, like, I will again, to what you're saying, like, with trusting, it's like, "God, I will choose to trust you, like, you
Yeah.
have good plans for my life. You are good, and
Yeah.
you want good things for me. You're here to prosper me, not to harm me."
Yeah.
And so if you're like thinking about how God wants to prosper you and give you an amazing life, and obviously it doesn't mean there won't be hardships and there won't be, growing moments and seasons and all of that. It doesn't mean we're just happy go lucky,
Yeah.
singing kumbaya all day, every day. But
Yeah.
like, God does want to give good gifts to his children.
Yeah.
Like, he wants to give good things to you. And so it's like, if you really are coming through that lens, and then you're also having that open handed surrender of like, bless it or block it, I trust you. and
Mhm.
and then when something is blocked, you're like, I'm just going to believe that that was for my very best, instead
You
of
have
thinking like
to.
I needed to
Yeah.
do something different. Just trust that that was meant to be. So I
Mhm.
really like what you said there. And one other thing I want to add in about what you said too is that, like, you can think that you're completely healed, and then you go on dates.
Yeah.
And then you will be triggered,
Yeah.
because going on dates is so vulnerable that
Yeah.
it's triggering, right? And so
Mhm.
sometimes I feel like people are like, "Oh, like, how healed do you need to be before you can go on dates?" And I honestly don't fully know the answer to that question. I'm
No,
like, I don't there how do we even I'm not even 100%. It's like, I've been married for 5 years and yet I still have more healing to do.
of
So like,
course.
what does healed even fully mean? Like, how
Yeah.
do we determine how healed or not healed you are? And so of course there's like steps to take to become more intentional with dating, and to have
Mhm.
stronger communication, and to know yourself better, and to raise your standards. Like, of course there's growth to be done in that, but you're going to learn the most when you start
Yes.
going on dates. You're going to start to be like, why
100%.
am I showing up like this? Why am I attracting men who are showing up like this? What is about me that is attracting this? Because ultimately we will attract someone who's at the same level of health that we're at. So he might look different than you, like, let's say you're not in a super healthy spot and you attract someone who's not super healthy. His health might look different. Like, he could be like drinking or using drugs or like doing like really dramatic things, but his unhealth might be that like he's insecure in who he is and he's numbing his pain. And maybe you could be insecure in who you are and numbing your pain, but in a different way,
Different way.
via like, showing up super perfectly and not letting anyone ever see you without any makeup on, and critiquing every photo and saying how fat you look, or thinking like, I hate how I look in pictures. And like, so both are rooted in low insecurity and low self-worth, but
Yeah.
they're manifesting differently. So like, you could attract someone who's at the same level of health, even though your unhealth is looking different, right? And
Right.
so you do want to look at like, why am I attracting people like that? What are like maybe the fingers that I'm pointing at them? And I mean, the
Mhm.
same goes, this is like similar to the marriage conversation, is like, what are the
Yeah.
fingers I'm pointing at someone else? And then looking back at yourself and be like, okay, what can I do to
Right.
shift this reality?
Right.
And so anyway, I just thought I would share that
Well,
within what you're saying.
Yeah, and trusting that they're all meant to teach you something. So, like, I think of everyone that I've talked to, it's like, okay, this person could be showing me, are you going to choose yourself this time? Like, this isn't right for you. Even though they're super cute,
Mm.
can you choose you? Can you actually stand firm in like what you want and your own boundaries? Like, there's different lessons in everything. And I think sometimes we look at them, because I'm so on that too, where because I'm self aware of like, okay, if I'm judging this person thinking, they're, I don't know, think like lost or not successful, or I don't know, like don't have their life together, like you said, like not healthy, or they do this or they do that. It's being willing to look at yourself. But I think sometimes we're so logical about it. Like, well, he does drugs, but I don't do drugs. And like you just said, how it's like, yeah, but okay, is there areas of your life where you're numbing, or you have escapisms, or you have things where you're not willing to look at your own insecurities, and how it's showing up and manifesting in your life could look completely different? I feel like that's so key, because sometimes we look at it, we're like, well, we're not like that and we don't do that. And it's like, okay, it may not be identical, but like the root of it could be the same. And so there's actually more sameness in both of you than what you can see. And even that alone can sometimes be triggering, because it's like maybe both of you are trying to avoid that little part of you. And now you just
Right.
got mirrored face to face. And now you have to look at it and you're like, oh shit, like that's a part of me I didn't want to have to look at. And so I really just trust that everything shows you something. And even for myself, I took, I don't know, like a half a year, maybe even close to a year. Like I've been on this healing journey, let's say, for a couple years now. But like the last year when we separated, it was very much focused on me. I wasn't dating. I wasn't like going out with anybody.
Yeah.
And I feel like once I started, it's like you can think you know so much about yourself, but you're going to learn the most in relationship, whether that's friends, family, partners. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter. Like when you're in relation with other people, you see the most, because I am super loving, composed, and peaceful alone. Like I'm always like, life is like,
Life is so
honestly,
good by myself.
things are so good when I'm alone. I'm at my best self. Then I met with humans and I'm like, oh crap, like there's a side of me that I didn't know could still come out. And like, why am I acting that way? And why am I feeling this way? And going on those first few dates showed me a ton about myself. It allowed me to see how I used to operate in the beginning of relationships, and
Mm.
how one day and you're cute, I'm locked in and we're getting married. Like that. I'm like, but I wouldn't even logically really think about anything else. I'm like, well, I like you and everything feels good. So everything's perfect and we're in a fairy tale now. Where now I'm like, okay, slow down. But it
Mm.
showed me what I used to do. And so my first date I went on showed me that. And I was like, dang, like this is how I got in pretty much all of my relationships. I'd hang out with them
Wow.
one time in that type of setting, and we would be together forever. Like I was always in long-term relationships. And so I realized that's what I do with people before I even really know them. And so it
Mm.
allowed me to, by just noticing that, it wasn't necessarily anything, there's nothing wrong with him. He's a great guy. But like, I'm so grateful I went on that date to show me that. And so I do think you've got to be willing to put yourself out there, because you're going to learn so much about you through conversations, through dating, understanding what your own needs are. The next guy I talked to, I realized I really value communication, and I'm not willing to ever overlook that. Like, if you can't communicate well with me, like I don't want to live a life where I'm worried or trying to understand. You know what I mean? Like I was
Yeah.
just like, that's really valuable to me. So even though you're awesome, like there's so much about you that's really awesome, I personally can't live a life where I'm questioning communicate, like where
Yeah.
we're just not matching. I'm like, that's really important to me. So if you're an 8 hour later texter, like I'm not good with it. And that's it. It's like sometimes choosing yourself in that moment of the things that you don't really, yeah, that you're just not okay with.
Yeah.
I want to know about your story with Frankie. So how did it happen?
Oh, my favorite story.
Right? But I'm like, and I'm curious from the perspective too of, because obviously you see so much online and so much everywhere that's like when you least expect it, that's when it comes. When you're not trying to look like, oh my God, where is he? Where is he? Where is he? Did you feel like you had found peace in your own life and being and doing? And like, yes, you're single and yes, you want your partner and you're still writing the letters and like, he exists, but you're not hyper fixated. Did you feel like you were in a space where you really felt peace, or were you kind of like really eagerly looking?
I would say I was more eagerly looking. Yeah,
Okay.
I don't agree always with the
Yeah.
advice of like it happens when you least expect it. I know that that happens for some people, and I did a poll on my Instagram story kind of recently, maybe like a month or two ago, and I'm trying to remember what the results were exactly, but it was something like it was around like 50-50. Like I asked like for the women who are married, how many of you did it happen when you least expected it versus how many did it happen like
When
when you're actively,
Mhm.
actively trying. And I think it
Yeah.
was about 50-50 if I remember correctly. So,
Yeah.
I don't think that there's just like one right truth to that.
Yeah.
I would say like, when Frankie and I were kind of like starting to talk, and I'll get more into like the actual backstory of our story, but I was talking to 3 other guys. And I remember one of my best friends flew out to California. She lives in Colorado. And I was like reviewing the roster with her of my 4 guys. And I was like, okay, so there's these 4 guys. I'm like, this guy's like this guy's like this guy. And she's like, okay, well, let's vote him off the island because blah, 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 blah. And Frankie lived in Colorado as well. And so she was like,
Yeah.
you don't want to live in Colorado. So like, let's vote Frankie off the island. And I was like, okay, good point. Yeah, that's not going to work. So like, that's kind of how I was. Like, I was like dating different guys. And when I say dating, I like want to be very clear. Like,
Yeah.
you can listen to my entire podcast episodes on this, but I save sex for marriage, and I believe in being celibate till marriage based on being a Christian. Like, obviously, I know not everyone listening is, but
Yeah.
even if you're not, I mean, there's like a huge side of TikTok right now that's like not even about Christians. It's just about celibacy because you
No,
can
and I
think
can
more
speak on this.
clearly.
I
Yeah,
can
I'd be
speak on this
curious to know
just
your
from like
thoughts.
the energy perspective. Like
Yeah,
Christian or not, it's I think sometimes when it was like don't have sex till marriage, there was no understanding and reasoning behind it.
of the
So it
why.
felt like a rule versus
Mhm.
understanding the value in why you don't really want to exchange energy with just anybody.
Yep.
And it creates, I don't know, think of it like energetic cords, whatever. You're connected to these people
Yep.
and it clouds, and especially for women, we are going to grow an emotional attachment to these people. It's hardwired in our DNA.
Yep.
If you don't want to be emotionally connected to this guy who literally doesn't give a shit about you, don't sleep with them. And I think for so many of us, we think like, oh, well, maybe if we slept with them, then like maybe they'll see our worth, or like maybe they'll like us, or maybe they'll think it was
Mhm.
so good. And so like I'm gonna give myself to him because then you feel close and you feel connected. They actually pull away. I did a podcast with this guy, I haven't aired it yet, but he said the best thing that you can do is not let a man ejaculate. Like you want him to love you and want to pursue you. Don't let
Mhm.
him ejaculate in that season until you're emotionally bonded, because it takes men so much longer to see a woman in that way and like
Mhm.
actually want to develop that relationship with them, which is what you're wanting. Like you're wanting a husband, you're not just wanting someone to sleep with. So
Right.
there's so much value. Like I didn't sleep with anybody for almost a year. It was like and then I did because I felt like I needed to. And then it was like, okay. And now I'm in this space again where it's like, yeah, my original thought was I want to not sleep with anybody until I know it's my husband. And
Yeah.
now I'm in that space again too, where I'm like, I'm not willing to just sleep with anybody. And the whole thing about, well, we need our sexual needs met too. I'm like, do it yourself. Like I don't think it's women empowerment to go sleep around at all.
Right. No.
The only person you're harming in that is you. And so
Amen.
it's like, there's so much out there that you don't have to be a Christian to understand the value in keeping that for you until it really, really feels right with somebody who it's like mutual. I don't know.
Yeah.
There's just
And
so
there's
much
just so much
value.
science behind it too.
Yes.
Like you look at like the amount of dopamine that is released when you have sex, it's like no crap that it's addicting. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, I think I had the exact stats on my podcast where my husband and I talk about this, but it's like you get double the amount of dopamine hit from sex than you do from a cigarette. And I know cigarettes have like nicotine, which is also addicting, but I'm like, you think about anything that does dopamine releases, like our phones or cigarettes or whatever,
Yeah.
chocolate, like the more you give yourself that thing, the more you need it and crave it. And so it's
Yeah.
like if you're having sex with someone, but they're maybe not your person. And I think the worst can be is even if like they're a good guy,
Yeah.
but there's nothing really wrong, but you do feel like a low level lack of peace, but you're having sex, and that's going to help,
Yeah. Bond you guys.
masquerade that
Yeah.
peace, like that lack of peace. And then you're going to be more likely to stay in it and convince yourself more and more and more of like why you should stay in it, because you are literally bonded with that human.
Yeah.
Like on a spiritual level, you're bonding with that human being. And like,
Mhm.
yeah, I completely agree with what you're saying. Like there was such a like a purity culture thing that was so annoying. That was
Yeah.
like it was like so, I don't know, like it was like throw up in my mouth, like get a purity ring and stuff like that. And that
Yeah.
it was all just like, and it was also pushed so much more on women. And it was
Yeah.
like all these, but yeah, to your point, if you just explain the why behind it,
Yeah.
you think about like I saw this girl on TikTok. I loved her thing. I wish I could quote her name and give her the credit for this. But if you look it up, hopefully you could find it. But she says like when you're having sex, you're going to turn every red flag into a green flag.
Mm.
And she's like, she's a dating coach. And she's like, I don't even work with women who are having sex with their person because I just know that
They
every
can't
time
do
I
it.
try to challenge them, they're just going to be like, oh, well, this and this and this, because they can't even think clearly because of the sex.
Yeah.
And I was like, dang, that's like pretty next level. But I love that, the like
Mhm.
honesty in that. And
Mhm.
it's so true that if you're having sex, like I would say, if you're listening to this right now and you're in a relationship that you're kind of unsure about, like you're dating someone and you're
Yeah.
like, I don't know if this is the person I'm supposed to marry or not, I would say take sex out of the equation
Yeah.
and let them know that you're choosing celibacy till marriage, or even you could say celibacy till maybe you don't have a ring on yet, or like maybe till like engagement or something like that.
Yeah. So
Obviously
you
you want
know
to be
that you're
careful.
gonna be in a real relationship, not like, okay, I made you my girlfriend today, so now we can have sex today. No, like you want a commitment that you know
Yeah.
you both feel like is going in the right direction.
Right. Right. And again, I mean, if you're a Christian, I'm just going to take this like hard stance. The Bible's really clear on this one. And you can go listen to Frankie and I's podcast where we talk very, like, if you're going to call yourself a follower of Jesus and if you say that you believe in the Bible, then this one's like really black and white. There's not really a lot of gray area on it. Well,
Yeah.
there is no gray area. But if you're not a Christian, that's why I'm saying if you're not a Christian, then, you could be like, oh, maybe when we get engaged or something like that.
Yeah.
But all this goes to say is that, or you can just not let them know, but you could like not let them know in the way of like an ending point, but just being like, hey, right now I just need some
If you want to
clarity on
gain
our
clarity,
I'm
yeah.
working on clarity for our relationship, and I just want to take a couple months off of having sex. I know that that really sucks. I know that that's like probably not going to be like super fun, but like I just want us to like really focus on our relationship and like who we are as two people, and just take like the physical side out of it, so I can really like think clearly about our future and to see if like we really are meant to be together. Like you could just say
Yeah.
that. You don't even have to say like once, because I just don't
Yeah.
want to put an ultimatum in place to be like
No.
pressuring him to like get a ring for you or something,
No.
so that he can have sex again or something. Like
Yeah.
it's not an ultimatum type situation. It's literally just you explaining to the person that you're dating that you're looking for clarity in your relationship,
Yeah.
and you're not doing this to withhold, you're not doing this as a punishment to him or anything like that. Like, and if the guy is the right guy for you and he actually wants to fight for you and he actually wants you guys to have a future together, he's going to be the type of guy who's going to be like, okay, like I respect that. Like I want you to find clarity. Like I want to do everything possible for you to see that we're the right people together. But if
Mhm.
he's not the right guy, then he's probably going to like pressure you a bunch, make you feel like crap about trying to, wanting to not have sex for a while you figure things out. Like he's going to
Mhm.
make you feel like, really bad about it. And so that's like probably not your person, because your person's going to respect your boundaries and you're like wanting to find
Right.
clarity for your life. So anyway, we digressed, but back to the story of how Frankie and
Yeah.
I met. um, okay.
Which this
So
is so fun because your friend was like, yeah, he doesn't live close, so like ask him, which is also great. So how did you connect? How did you know who he was? And then from there.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then yeah. So, okay. So I had moved from Colorado to California in 2016. So I was like 2 years out of college. I was 24. I started working in the fitness industry. I was a personal trainer. And then I started building my brand, Next Level Confident, on Instagram, which is just under my regular name, Janelle Lynnae. But I do have a Next Level Confident Instagram. I don't use it anymore. Anyway, it was too much to have a business Instagram and a personal. So I just do the personal. But anyway, started my business. I was personal training, and then I was doing like personal training plus confidence work. And so I was getting ready to launch my company like full blown and quit my job because I couldn't take online clients for personal training as well as take clients in person at the gym I worked at. They said it was like
A
they had
conflict.
a non-compete, whatever.
Yeah.
So I was building the brand,
Mhm.
starting to get more followers. And I had companies starting to reach out to me to be a brand ambassador. And I had this company called Organifi, which is like a green juice. It's kind of like Bloom, I guess, is like
Yeah.
kind of like the maybe more trendy version currently. But Organifi was like a green juice. My favorite podcaster, his name is Sean Stevenson. He had the Model Health Show,
Yeah.
still
Yeah.
does. He would always talk about Organifi. So I was like, oh my gosh, Organifi just reached out to me. This is amazing, because Sean Stevenson does Organifi and I'm basically famous. So I was like, I made it. I made it in life. Yeah. Because obviously just becoming a brand ambassador just makes you so much money just instantly.
Yeah.
Anyway, oh well.
No, but like
So
me too. I was a personal trainer too, and I remember like getting the brand deals for the cool brands. You're like, oh my god. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. You feel like so special. And it is special because it's like cool,
Yeah.
anyone who's maybe starting your brand and maybe that's where you're at right now, like it is a
Yeah.
beautiful step in the right direction to see the brands want to partner with you. So it is cool. I like realize all of a sudden, like, oh, that might make someone feel sad if they're like in that stage of their business right now.
No,
So we don't
it's
want you to
okay.
feel sad if
But
that's
yeah,
what's happening.
but
So
we can all know that you don't make money from it. It's fine.
you don't make
Yeah,
much money from being a brand ambassador. We can
yeah,
tell you that one for free.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, unless you have like 1 million followers. So
yeah.
okay. So fun track is that so I go to this Organifi event and they invited me to their gold turmeric drink launch. And I was like,
Mhm.
okay, yes. So I got ready to go to the party. I go to the event, it's downtown San Diego, and there was only probably like 30 people there. It was a pretty small group. And a woman named Susan had reached out to me. It's cool because Susan actually and I became friends after that. And then she actually caught the bouquet at our wedding. And then she was at our 5-year anniversary / renewal vow renewal last weekend. Anyway, Susan, shout out girl. So Susan invited me to the event. Susan was there. Her and I were talking about dating apps. We're both single. She introduces me to a couple there named Nicholas and Amanda. Nicholas and Amanda own a men's coaching program that they called like a men's mastermind. And I didn't know what that meant, but they were like, yeah, we basically coach men on like growing their business while also like growing their faith because they were Christians. And then they also like help with health and fitness. They're like, we're just helping men live like a holistically great life with like family and relationships, business, and health, and how to be successful at all of them. And I was like, oh, that sounds super, super cool. So I was like, how many guys are in the program? Probably asking some of those types of questions. And then I was like, great. Well, do you have any guys in your program that are tall, dark, handsome, love Jesus, works out a bunch, entrepreneur? And I just like listed off my my non-negotiables, my key non-negotiables. And they were like, actually, yeah, I think we do have someone that fits that description. And so they pull up a picture of him. They show me his picture on Instagram. I'm like, yeah, he looks cute. Put me on a date with him. And they're like, okay, sounds good. I didn't know because I was like so new to the online world at this point. This
Yeah.
was in like 2017 or 2018. I think, oh, this was in 2018. Yeah. I was just really, I don't know why I was on Instagram, growing my Instagram, but it didn't occur to me that this person didn't live in San Diego. I just thought we were talking about someone who lived in San Diego. So I
Right.
was like, put me on a date with him, blah, blah, blah. They're like, okay, sounds good. Then I keep chatting with them. And then later on that night, I see them again. And I'm like, hey, don't forget to like introduce me to that guy and put me on the date. So, really just the queen of asking for what she wants. And that's part of confidence, ladies.
Yeah.
And so a couple weeks passed. I think the wife, Amanda, and I exchanged Instagrams and maybe phone numbers as well. And they still hadn't introduced me. And I was like a little bit annoyed. And I was like, okay, that's annoying because I literally followed up at the end of the night and I want to go on a date with that guy. Well, I think it would have been like, yeah, I need to actually look back and see when that actual event was, but maybe it was like 4 to 6 weeks later. I
Yeah.
posted on Instagram a picture of me paddleboarding. It was a little bit of a sexy picture. I was not wearing a bathing suit. I was wearing like shorts, but it was from like behind and like you can kind of see my butt and it looked pretty nice. I'm not gonna lie. And the picture and then I'm like, who wants to go paddleboarding with me or something like that? Like whatever, being silly and cute and flirty as
Yeah.
I was because I was a single girl. And
Yeah.
Amanda tagged Frankie on it and goes, I bet at Frankie Vignone would want to go paddleboarding with you. So I'm like, oh, here's the guy that was mentioned at the party a couple whatever weeks or months
Yeah.
ago. And so I click on his profile and I go to look at it more carefully other than just the one picture they had showed me. And I'm like, what the heck? This guy lives in Colorado. And I was like pissed because I had just moved from Colorado about a year and a half, 2 years prior.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm not moving back to Colorado. Like it's so landlocked. I'm not as much of a mountain person. I love the
Yeah.
ocean. I was like, this is just not the vibe. So I was like, whatever, he's hot. I'll follow him, but like probably nothing's gonna happen.
Yeah.
And I was like off and on dating a guy at that point also. We were never like boyfriend, girlfriend, but we were like medium serious, I guess you could say. It was a little bit of like a situationship, but we both knew there wasn't a future with it. So I would say like when I got introduced to Frankie, even though I was like interested, I also wasn't like, this is my husband, I
Yeah.
was like, okay, like he seems really cool and attractive
Mhm.
and they like apparently has everything I'm looking for, but we don't live in the same place and I'm also dating other guys here in San Diego and whatever.
Yeah.
And so we both follow each other. We DM'd a little bit here and there. And basically for like, I think it's like about 8 or 9 months
Yeah.
where like we DM back and forth a little bit here and there. Like he would respond to my stories sometimes and I would respond
Yeah.
back and I would ask him a question a lot of times and be like I was working out a lot, right? So I like post a workout move and then he would respond to the workout move and be like, nice, like that looks sweet or whatever. Who knows? Something probably a little bit cooler than that. And then I would
That
respond
looks
like,
sweet.
it's so sweet, like cool. And then I would be like, yeah, like what kinds of workout moves do you like to do? Or something like cheesy back, like trying to like start a
Yeah,
conversation.
yeah, yeah.
And then he just like wouldn't write me back. And I'd be like, okay, never mind. And then he would like respond to my story again, like a few days or a few weeks later and like say something else very like short and professional and not very flirty.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, this guy, I don't know if this guy's really into me or whatever,
Yeah.
but maybe he is because he like keeps like kind of sliding my DMs, but kind of not.
Yeah.
So I was like, I don't know what to think of him. But again, I was like dating different guys
Yeah.
and off and on with that one guy. And so I was like, I wasn't like super attached to it. But I do remember there was a time that I was dating that other guy and I kept getting back with him and my parents were like not pleased with that situation for a couple different reasons. But my mom was like, don't you know any just like really nice, good Christian loving guys, like Jesus loving men? Do you know anyone like that? And I was like, well, I do. I kind of have an Instagram crush on this guy named Frankie, but like it's probably never going to happen. He lives in Denver, so I kind of like had written it off a little bit. Um, and then behind the scenes of that is that Frankie actually was dating someone as well, but like neither of us had posted our people on Instagram anywhere, which is always, a very solid red flag if you don't want to show off the person you're dating on Instagram.
It's like, how serious is it if you guys
How
are not?
serious going to be if you use Instagram? Obviously, not everyone like uses like
Yeah.
posts on Instagram, but both Frankie and I were both running an online business on Instagram and like posting on a regular basis, and neither of us were
Right.
posting anything about that person. So,
Right.
Um, so I do actually, there was, I'll say at one point during our following, I do remember him posting a picture with a girl and me being like, oh, maybe I should unfollow this guy because like now he has a girlfriend and like I don't really want to
Yeah.
like follow this guy if he's like has a girlfriend. Like I literally followed him because I was like interested in
Right.
him for other
Interested in him.
reasons.
Yes.
Yeah. But I guess I obviously didn't unfollow him. So maybe I was just waiting to see if I saw more pictures of the girl or
Right.
not.
I feel like that's normal too. Because you're like, okay, like, wait, are these people dating? And then it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, either it gets like more progressive, like you see more and more
Yes.
pictures of them, and then you're like, you might unfollow because you're like, well, I'm not really going to follow this random guy that's
Yeah.
like my Instagram crush who now has found his person. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like there was a couple people that I did follow that were like that too, that were like kind of Instagram crushy type
Yeah.
people that I followed or met through online dating or something. And then I would see them one day, get into a serious relationship, and then I would just unfollow them and be like, okay,
Yeah.
like they found their person. They're obviously not my person, and
Yeah.
wish them luck. Goodbye. So then how we ended up meeting, landing the plane, is that I was flying home to Colorado at one point, and anytime I'd go home to Colorado, I would DM him and be like,
Wait,
hey,
were your parents still living there?
yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Yep. My parents still live there still to this day.
Yeah.
And so if I would fly home, I would like let him know. But I lived in northern Colorado and he lived in Denver. So they're like an hour and a half away from each other.
Yeah.
We have no mutual friends in the state of Colorado. So that was like what was so funny is that like, even though we had this Colorado connection, I wouldn't have met him unless I had come to San Diego, and I wouldn't have met him unless I had become an entrepreneur and gone to these entrepreneurial events and networked and then met the couple. Right. And if I didn't have the confidence to ask for what I wanted when I networked. So right. I would tell him when I would be back home, and then like it never worked out. And then one time I went home for my birthday and I was hosting myself like a little birthday party at New Belgium Brewery. And I remember like my friend and roommate Catherine was flying home with me that weekend to come to my little birthday party. And I had a beer at the airport. It was like a tall IPA. So I was feeling nice and buzzed. And I was like, I'm going to invite my Instagram crush to my birthday party. And Catherine's like, yeah, do it. And I'm like, okay. She's like, yeah.
That's like liquid confidence. She's like, you should totally come.
Yeah, because it was like an hour and a half away. So it's not like it was very close to him, and he knows none of my friends or anything like that. So yeah, I basically like DM'd him and was like, hey, I'm having a birthday party if you want to come. And he was like, are you going to be in Denver at all? And I was like, nope, if you want to see me, you got to come to my birthday party. Yeah. And he was like, okay, let me see. And then him and his friend ended up coming and going on a hike in that area and then coming to the brewery afterwards. And
I'm loving it.
Yeah. And then we were like kind of like a little bit flirty and stuff, but like all my friends were there. And it was like a big group of people, a bunch of like also clients and stuff were there. And so I was like, nothing like crazy happened, but I definitely was like, okay, this guy's definitely like as cool and good looking in person as I thought he was via online. So that's cool. And then I was again kind of dating that other guy. And I would say after I met Frankie, he became kind of like a new beacon of hope because I was like, okay, I don't know if it's him or if it's someone else like him, but like that's what I'm believing for. And so that kind of gave me the confidence within a couple, like I think it was within a month of that birthday party that I finally left the guy that I had been on like off and on
Yeah.
again with for like 9 months. So I finally did leave him, but it
Mhm.
wasn't like some instant thing where I ran to Frankie because he also was dating someone, right?
Right.
And so we were basically just like friends, you know, like nothing
Yeah.
inappropriate was happening. We were just like two pals and we would DM about business and faith. And like
Yeah.
one time we did a fast together because he listened to a sermon that I posted about like doing a fast for
Yeah.
like, you know, for your faith. And so we did a fast together one time before we ever met. We had a business call together one time to talk about like launching our businesses and talk about like things that were working, like strategies in our business. So
Yeah.
we were kind of just like pals, you know, but we
Yeah.
kept it pretty like professional. It wasn't super flirty. But I would say the flirtiness happened a little bit at my birthday party. And then a couple months after that, he started to get really flirty. And I remember being like, whoa, like Frankie's, I told my roommate, Catherine, I was like, Catherine, I feel like my Instagram crush is flirting with me like on a whole new level.
Yeah.
And she was like, really? Like, what's going on? I'm like, I don't know. I can just tell like something has shifted. And
Mhm.
what shifted was one, he broke up with the
Right.
girl and ended things officially. And then two, he went to Tony Robbins and he was like super riding the high of Tony Robbins, like walked
Right.
across like the coals on fire and stuff like that. So
Right.
he was just like in peak state. And he had like gone all in on his faith. He had gotten baptized and like post that publicly. And then like his pastor actually like called him out because the person he was dating, he was having sex with. And he
Right.
was like, his pastor was like, you can't be serving at our church if you're having sex outside of marriage. So like you need to choose what path you're going on.
Mhm.
And so Frankie shares his side of the story of like he sat down with this girl and was like, I love Jesus a lot and I need to be with someone who loves Jesus as much as I do. And I
Mhm.
am never like, I can never be with someone who's not on that same journey as I am. And she just like, you know, I think she probably wanted to be on that journey. Like she was trying, but she really wasn't all that aligned. And so it was
Yeah.
like became really obvious after that conversation that they weren't really
Yeah.
going anywhere. So, you know, he's on fire for God. He's single. He's now gone to Tony Robbins. He's in peak state. And then he starts flirting with me a bunch. Then he had a business trip
Yeah.
in San Diego, flew to
Yeah.
San Diego, DM'd me and was like, hey, you want to grab a workout? And I was like, yeah, let's grab a workout. And so we went and worked out at the beach together. We ran and like splashed in the waves together. And that's when things were getting pretty flirty. And I like joked around one time, like I was telling him a story about two people kissing. And I was like, grabbed his face and I was like, it was kind of like this. And I like acted like I was going to give him a kiss, but then I like didn't because I was like, you know, just putting
Yeah.
the vibes out, but I didn't want to make the first move.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, then that night we ended up like making out. And then the next day he was flying home to Denver. And as he was driving away, he was like, so are you moving to Denver or am I moving to San Diego? And so from there, it happened really quick. Like 7 days later, he asked me to be his girlfriend. We got engaged 6 months after that and then married 6 months after
Yes.
that. And
Yeah.
so our whole like journey happened pretty quickly because we just
Yeah.
like knew so quick. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I remember that because I'm like, I've been following you since, yeah, like I think the whole time, like
Probably.
way from
Yeah.
back then. No, literally, because
Yeah.
Hilly introduced us forever ago,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
probably over 5 years ago. So
I
I'm like,
think
it was
so.
close-ish to the beginning of all of that when you guys were
Yeah.
getting married because it was quick that you guys got married. So I'm like, I feel
Mhm.
like I was following you before you guys actually got married. So when you
I
were
love
dating,
that. I think
so
you're
cool.
right. That's so
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, you've been here for the whole journey.
It's kind of weird, right? I've seen it like I've seen you evolve and grow through so many different phases, and like I just feel like it's so valuable that you're sharing your journey and the love story because so much out there is negative almost about relationships. And so it's so nice to see people who are happy and maintaining, like you said, like maintaining the honeymoon phase because you're choosing each other in
Mhm.
your relationship and your marriage. And I think that it's beautiful. I have so many other things I wanted to ask you, but we're at an hour. So is there
Of course.
any last thoughts or things that you want to share? Or maybe even just like I'm thinking of the people who, yeah, anything you feel called to share.
Hmm. Yeah, I think I would just say, like, for anyone listening, whether you are single right now and believing to find your person, or maybe you're in a relationship, you're trying to find clarity, or maybe you're married and you want to have a better marriage, I would just say constantly be praying and ask God to renew your hope and renew your faith in what's possible because
Mhm.
miracles are happening all the time. And um, truly, like, Frankie is my miracle husband. And I know that if God can do that for me, there's nothing like, you know, special about, I am a special person because we're all special people, like we're
Yeah,
all
yeah, yeah.
loved by God, but you know what I mean, there's nothing
Yeah.
special about me in the way that like God would do it for me but not for you. And so
Right.
just remember that like God does want to give you the desires of your heart. And um your love story is going to be so beautiful. This is not like you're not I just feel like there's so many heavy hearts and so much like hopelessness and discouragement of like, well, maybe it's just not meant for me, or like maybe it's just never going to happen. And I think it can also be really hard if you're starting to get a little bit older and maybe you want kids, but you're like still single and you're starting to think about like your eggs and things like that. And so there's just like timelines and pressures and disappointment and lack of hope. And so I would just like pray over each one of you that hope is restored in Jesus's name, and that you would just experience faith on a whole new level and a vision that is expanded on a whole new level of what's possible for you, because God is good. He wants to give you good things, and your love story is coming. Your love story is coming. And when your love story comes, it's going to blow your mind. You're going to be so happy that you waited. You're going to be so happy for all the heartbreaks that you went through, all the men you had to walk away from, like all this, the pain and the frustration. It's all going to make sense one day, and you're going to be so freaking grateful you worked through it and that you believe and you held out and you didn't just close the door and harden your heart. So keep your heart soft, keep your heart open, keep believing that this is happening for you. And yeah, just I think that's all.
I just love that we both ended up wearing pink for this, because like
Yes.
the way you just ended, like keep your heart soft and keep it open. And I was like, pink was the perfect color for that.
Yes.
Okay, where can people find you? Obviously, I'll put your links and stuff in the show notes for people who are wanting to check out your course that you talked about, and then also be able to follow you in your love story and your journey. But what's your podcast called with Frankie?
Our podcast is called the Next Level Confident Podcast.
Okay,
So
and
that's
then
the podcast.
yeah, and then Instagram handle.
Instagram handle is at Janelle_Lynnae.
Okay, amazing. And that's 2 N's in the Lynnae, by the
Yep,
way.
Lynnae.
But we'll put it all in the
Yeah.
chat, or in the text box. Amazing. I'm so glad you were here.
And
This
then I
was
would
so
just say,
fun.
I do want to give one freebie away, is that I do have a free masterclass,
Yeah.
and it's called Magnetized Marriage, and it's 3 steps to attracting your dream man. And so that masterclass has journaling prompts for you. It has 9 powerful affirmations for you to be speaking over your life while you're looking for your person. It has a lot of good tools and tips and tricks. And then also, if you are interested in joining Attract Your Husband Academy, there's a gift at the end there to give you a price promotion to get a little bit of money off and to be able to join
Good.
the academy. So that would be the best way to join the academy, is
I
just
love
take
it.
the free masterclass. And if you want to join at the end, you totally can.
Yeah, I love it. Amazing.
Amazing.
Oh, thank you for being here.
Yes, Carly, thank you for having me. I'm
Yes.
just so grateful to be here. I loved our conversation, and
No, it
you're
was
a
so good.
wonderful podcast host. Seriously,
Thank you.
you crushed it, girl.
Thank you. You crushed it. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it so much. And I'm so happy for both of you guys.
Thank
Congrats
you.
on 5 years of
Your
marriage.
time is coming soon, girl. Your time's
I
coming
know.
soon. I can't wait.
Yeah.
It'll be fun for us to be able to listen back to this podcast in, whatever, a year, a couple years,
Yes.
and be like, wow. And now you're with your person. We can just connect all the
I
dots.
can already see it. I write the letters and I can like feel that I'm talking to him.
Mm.
Like I can feel the presence already. So it's just like I just have a knowing that I'm like, I'm
It's a
just
matter
good.
of time.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Amazing.
Beautiful.
Thank you for being
Yay.
here.
You're welcome. Talk to
Bye.
you later.
Best.
Bye.